Hello everybody, John here, and on To The Garage today we're looking at the next section in our rundown of top 10 things to love about owning an XK8 or XKR. What's our league table of reasons why we all love and adore them, and why should everybody else buy one? So thank you all for watching the first instalment, numbers 10 down to 7. Please, it promoted a real big amount of debate, commentary. I've had lots of emails. There was lots of good stuff on the comments area as well. Just like to highlight that Martin Joyce got in contact via the comments under the first video. And he was looking after the development of the AJ26 engine in terms of its performance, and was able to contribute lots of really interesting stuff on how that engine was developed, its key competitors, how they achieved the torque curve, etc, etc. I did a sort of tiny mini interview via the comment section. Thank you so much for that, Martin. I'm sure that a lot of our subscribers are going to be really interested to read what you were able to share with us, and maybe we should get together sometime and do a bit of a video call, a bit of a chat, and put that up for the viewers to listen, so that you're not inundated with more and more individual questions. So we'll get to that later. Lots of people have been guessing their top threes. There have been some themes coming through, and a theme that's running through a lot of these seems to be around sound, performance again, but more generally, whereas I went for the torque. The interior and the exterior looks, they seem to be strong themes. So just going to park that. One of our subscribers' comments has actually changed the way I'm editing the video. So as you may remember from the first episode, whenever we revealed a next one in our top 10, it was accompanied by a particular sound effect. That's gone. Thank you to Papa Keys 3. I absolutely agree with you. And how can we have a mere race car sound when we're talking about a car that's got an open pipe sound that's rather better? So we've replaced that little audio clip. Thank you, Papa Keys. And let's get into numbers 6 and onwards. So at 6, I have the Heritage. And lots of you have used words like this in your suggestions, but we're all singing from the same hymn sheet here. This is very much about the history and how Jaguar uses it, the imagery, the iconography, all fabulous. This is the original advert from way back in '96. And the spirit of its ancestors was very much at the forefront of how they were sharing the launch of the new XK8. I think few brands in the world trade as successfully on their past and their heritage as Jaguar. They never pastiche themselves, they never cynically just copy themselves. Their modern cars are super modern. There's nothing holding them back, but they trade on their past rather well. The lineage from the E-Type into the XK8 is plain and obvious for all to see. We've got that bulge down the centre of the bonnet, which is, although slid forward, the same sort of shape. The wheel arch crease, where the higher hump blends into the bonnet, is the same. The profile of the headlight apertures is actually very, very similar, although obviously the 7-inch round lamps don't really cut it in the 1990s. The chrome streak across the grille, or in the open-mouthed, more sporting versions, the shape of the grille, the vestigial overriders, the whole thing is just beautifully, beautifully done. So we own practical classics that are thoroughly modern for their era, still quite modern today, but which have genuine heritage that can be traced way on back. Jaguar is a company that's always done this beautifully. Our cars were born at Jaguar Castle Bromwich, a factory I've personally worked in. And again, look at how they do their brand imagery, reinforcing that Britishness, eye-catching. They are well known for being, Castle Brom is the home of the Spitfire. Jaguar produced the Spitfire. And in this shot you can see a special edition of the F-Type. It's actually a special operations car which is dressed very much in Spitfire fashion. This is actually some footage from one of my older videos, the 10,000 mile review of the XK8. I'll put a little card top right if you want to watch this video in detail. But here what I'm doing is I'm explaining that the dashboard for the XK8 is styled to be a replica of the famous Spitfire wing profile. Very unique profile, and you look at those two images together, you see it immediately. And that's homage to the fact that these cars were built in the factory that produced the Spitfire. Another one of our subscribers was kind enough to share the fact that he worked in the factory that produced the tooling and the dashboards for our cars, and it was the last dashboard they manufactured where the originals, the books, were handmade, hand carved. This is a sculpture called Sentinel. That means guardian, and it stands on Spitfire Island just outside the bay where our cars were built in Castle Brom, Birmingham. It was designed by Tim Tolkien, the great nephew of J.R.R. Tolkien, and looks over the Birmingham skyline outside our factory. The rails representing the vapour trails on half-scale models of the Spitfire with our dashboard profile silhouetted against the sky. That always stirs my soul every time I see it. So Jaguar more broadly has always been excellent at connecting its current and its past. And as I say, never really pastiching itself, never doing anything silly, but something interesting, novel, quirky, and something to stir the emotions. And their advertisements for the XK8 have always been excellent. They were all based on the concept of, we don't need to tell you too much about it. If you like this, you're going to want one. We're just reminding you of it. My particular favourite catchphrase from the XK8 launch is, "The cat is back." I love that, simple. And collecting brochures, leaflets, articles about Jaguars is just as much fun as the ownership itself. So Jaguar started off as Swallow sidecars, who made beautiful sidecars for motorcycles. That then changed into SS around 1933, I think, when the company started to produce cars, and the SS logo was put on top of an Art Deco version of the Swallow's wings, which were on the original badge. After the war, though obviously they didn't make a big deal of it, it's a bit like saying don't look down, the SS badge and the rather Iron Eagle sort of look to the badge was seen as in poor taste, and that was really rather backed up by some unfortunate advertisements from the very launch of the first SS car in '33. The business decided to sit behind one of the phrases and terms it had reserved for a particular model, Jaguar. And that is where the business we know of today and the iconography that we know of today starts from. The leaping Jag. The stylization of the cat is not entirely fanciful. As a feline predator, the Jaguar is known for its attacks are fast, silent, and from above. And this is the pounce that it does when attacking. And versions of those badges exist through to today and certainly are on our cars. The Jaguar Leaper, which is the right term for all the sideways on images, and the Growler the face-on image of the Jaguar. The Growler is relatively unique in the automotive world, as only one other car company has ever gone for a face-on wild animal that's shown, it's particularly in the interiors of their cars, and that's Dodge with the Ram. And then was Jaguar's racing heritage, and at this point I really do have to draw a line under it, else I'm going to turn this into a history lesson, and that's not what this is about. So let's move on to the next item in our top 10. So in at 5 for me is ride and comfort. This did appear in a lot of your voting, but I think handling probably came up a little higher. Whereas I'm going to, spoiler, handling does not appear in my list. The XK8 handles beautifully. It has got tenacious grip, and it has got GT car levels of handling, not sports car levels of handling, in my opinion. Why have I gone for ride and comfort? Because it achieves these things whilst providing that sporting handling. That's the part for me is so incredibly impressive. And in that same sense, I'm not suggesting that the XK8 is the most comfortable car that money can buy. It plainly is not. In fact, I would go as far as to say you could take any of the 1980s American land yachts, and empirically they are going to be more comfortable. They're going to have that cushy elegance of ride that irons out all wrinkles. But throw one into a corner and it's a different game altogether. It's that combination of a sporting edge, a bit of feel, a bit of feedback, the ability to go around a corner like a scolded cat, while still maintaining comfort and luxury and a feel to the ride that is very, very hard to top, full stop. I have had experience of really, really nice cars in terms of comfort. One of my previous cars was a current, in inverted commas, shape XJ portfolio with the air suspension on the back. Very good. I've driven many an XJ6, which, you know, they have a reputation of having the magic carpet ride. Neither of those has the same degree of poise as the XK8. You could go for many of the things from Citroën with their clever hydro pneumatic, oleo pneumatic systems. And the compromise they make is incredibly long travel to enable them to gather the poise of the vehicle before it has to go into the next bend. And it is so impressive, it's incredible. But I would not want to pitch any of those up against an XK8 going around a few bends. And the XK8 is so close to delivering on that perfection in ride quality. If yours doesn't, by the way, get it checked out. They really, really should be good. XKRs are harder. Cars with CAT suspensions are slightly harder than a standard XK8. But that's because it's got the two settings, soft, nice, and firm for sporting. And I think the soft setting may be just a fraction harsher than the standard suspended car. But they should be great. And if they're not, look for fried dampers, look for rattly bushes, all those sorts of things. But also, a couple of top tips would be to look at the top mounts on the front struts to see if the rubber has completely collapsed. That can really ruin the ride. And on my first car, PJ, when I first had it, I used to think, well, I suppose this is why this is the sporting Jag. Really quite harsh on the front end. And the front wishbones were locked solid. They'd seized to the pin, and the pin had seized to the bush. And the only reason I actually discovered that in the end was driving back from an MOT, which it passed. I hit a pothole and snapped a top wishbone. Such is the compliance in the rest of the car. You can get away with frozen suspension and still just think, it's a bit harsh. So it should be superb. certainly on 18-inch, 19-inch wheels, 20s. So how are we achieving these amazing levels of comfort? And thanks to Dean Beresford and Paul Kane for the images that I'm using while I talk about this. This is Dean's XJS back axle, or IRS. The thing that made Jaguars famous for their suspension was probably this unit. It's a subframe housing a diff with inboard discs, and all of that is isolated and away from the sprung mass of the wheels. The suspension moves none of this. The drive shafts make the top link, where other cars might have a top wishbone or trailing arm. We have the drive shafts as our top link, which is incredible for suspension accuracy, reduces the unsprung weight again, all sorts of wonderful things go on. If we switch to the images from Paul's car, which is an XK8, and I've still not got over how pretty the suspension is on this car, we can see the XK8's version of that classic IRS. There, at the top of the picture, grey, is the drive shaft going to the universal joint inside the hub. That is the top wishbone, in effect, the top link on your suspension. The bottom link equally is a single arm, but with very wide spaced hinge points linking to the hub, front and rear, and then linking to the subframe at the back. So what we've got is very, very low unsprung weight. The XK8's IRS is an evolution of the original and differs, for simplicity's sake, I'll just describe it as having one set of dampers and springs rather than two, and outboard discs rather than inboard. We'll leave it at that just to avoid this going into another hour. Again, the whole diff is held up out of the way and is not having any part of the wheels transactions. The idea of having very, very low unsprung weight means that the wheels can move in harmony with the road without transmitting much of that to the body, and without the inertia involved being such that their move is delayed and upsets the vehicle. This enables the car to handle well at the same time as delivering absolutely magnificent ride comfort, noise, vibration and harshness levels. Again, on Paul's XK8, we switch our attention this time to the front suspension and what makes that deliver so much towards our ride and comfort. So the front suspension of the XK8 is mounted on a subframe, and for some vehicles the use of a subframe means cheap manufacture. Pressed steel frame that you bolt on to a monocoque, making it easy to build and easy to design. You don't have to get the body very accurate. With the XK8 that is not the point. The point is it has this beautiful, huge but light aluminium high pressure cast subframe, and all of the suspension components are mounted to it rather than the bodywork. So the pivot pins for the top wishbone pass through this subframe. The links from the bottom wishbones or control arms, as we can see here, go to that subframe. They're not reliant on the bodywork for their alignment, and they don't transmit any of their vibrations to the bodywork. Paul has polybushed his car. On a lot of cars, that is the death knell of noise, vibration and harshness. You take away the rubber, replace it with a harder neoprene type materials, and yeah, you get your handling, but oh, it's awful. On a Jag it really doesn't hurt it that badly because you are isolated. No part of the suspension is in metallic contact with the monocoque. It's all mounted on this subframe, front and rear. The top wishbones, which I managed to break, have the strut travelling through them. Our cars have something that looks like McPherson struts, but is in combination with the top and bottom wishbones, taking the spring away again from the sprung mass and hanging it off the bodywork. and letting the suspension do the job for its intended, move around in reaction to the road. Beautifully elegant. The car has also got a fantastic level of anti-squat and anti-dive technology, or geometry I should say, built into that suspension, meaning that if you brake from high speed in an XK8 and lamp the anchors on, as I'm doing here in this bit of dodgy footage, the nose really doesn't drop dramatically or smash into the deck. It moves down. There's about an inch of movement down, and then the suspension starts to push back. Again, we're not going to go into detail on this today because it'll turn into a technical lecture if I'm not careful. But yeah, you don't get this pitching forward when you brake. You can maintain a nice flat poise. The same style of geometry is built into the rear suspension, and we call it anti-squat, and that means basically when you hoof the throttle and the rear end on most cars would dig down and the nose would rise, that is controlled to a great extent on the XK8. Again, about an inch of downward squat, which is positive, and then it sits there. It's very, very flat, remains very calm, very collected under all throttle positions. You link all those things with the superb seats in the interior of the Mark 1s made by Lear. The later seats are by Recaro and are good, but in my opinion not quite as comfortable as the early ones. The level of undermat insulation, the isolation of all the bushes, the triple layer insulation in the hood on the convertibles, and you have a quiet, serene and wonderful place to spend time on your journeys. And now we come to number 4 in my list of 10 things I love about XK8 ownership. And I'm pleasantly surprised to say that quite a lot of you suggested something that sounded like this. I thought I might be the only one. Let's start broadly. If you've got an XK8, I think in the last couple of years we've moved from being on the fringes of the Jaguar classic scene, being almost seen as too modern, to actually starting to move into an area where people are making restoration parts for the XK8. We are more and more recognised as a group of folk who are looking after a aspiring classic that, if you're not careful, will dissolve like all cars in Britain. And we're just entering that period. So as a Jaguar car, it's kind of there at that sweet spot. We're at the beginning of its journey into being an icon, and that makes it really interesting. There are companies springing up all over the place, offering independent specialisms, looking after Jaguar XK8s. And the X308, which is the saloon twin of our cars, is going along that journey as well. X308s, XJs, XJ8s have been at banger money, as I would put it, for the last few years, and now all of a sudden people are starting to recognise this used to be the fastest saloon car you could buy in an XJR. It's still a fabulous car right now. Why isn't it worth more? And that starts to build things. It gets a bit of a buzz around the scene. The XK8 and XKR are the exotic end of that. They are rarer. They are a little bit more niche. They are absolutely amazing. Don't get me wrong, I want a 308 too. But the scene is starting to build. There are clubs aplenty. If you're into Jaguars generally or XK8 specifically, there are clubs you can join. I'm a member of the XK Car Club online. Something that I recommend, UK things. So if you're elsewhere in the world, maybe not for you, I don't know. I'm a member of the Jaguar Enthusiasts Club, which is a huge organisation. If you think you're in a big car club elsewhere in the world, check out this one. Let's bring their logo into view for you. Jaguar Enthusiast Club. I think it's only second to the MG Owners Club in the UK. I could be wrong on that. But their magazine is literally a magazine you will go into a shop and spend £5 on without twitching. Some club magazines, even if they are highly produced like this, do tend to be just advertisements. This is really, really well written. Got some fabulous stuff in it. That is worth its weight in gold, just being able to look forward to a magazine coming through the post each month. I used to be, and so did my wife, very involved with the kit car scene in the UK. In fact, we looked after one of the larger kit car clubs and edited their little magazine, I call it that. And as a social community, it was fantastic. But kit cars died off in the UK. No offence to people who are still in that scene, but they did in terms of a volume proposition, because the legislation involved in getting cars on the road, getting them through what we call SVA and IVA, got more and more litigious, more difficult, to the extent where to build the decent kit, it can cost you more than going out and buying a nice production car. So we sort of fell out of that scene a little bit and got into the Jaguar scene, and never really looked back. If I wanted to, I could attend a show every weekend. As it happens, myself and my wife don't actually attend too many things. That's more to do with me and the fact that I'm self-employed and all over the country. Never got any time to myself. And when I get home, I go, I'll go and make a video now. So we don't attend very much, but we could. And we'd always feel very welcome. What we also find about the Jaguar is the XK8 particularly is welcome everywhere and anywhere. Really, really odd niche thing. We can go to a classic car show and the car is 22 years old. So that's fine. It can go in most shows. It can sit alongside our T4 camper and our T2 camper and not be out of place at a mixed car show. We're welcomed by people who are into Japanese modded sports saloons because it's a really fast road car. We're welcomed by people who are into really old Jaguars and other old British stuff because they can see this is the next one in the line. We are welcomed by people at village fêtes because it's a fun and beautiful car and people like to look at it. Then we look at the community that we have got. So I run this YouTube channel because I like it. I love my car. I think you all know that. Well, my cars and my vans and all the other toys we've got. And I'm always playing in the garage. And the nature of my work, I travel around a lot. I consult. I help companies do things a little bit better. But I spend an awful lot of time away from home, coronavirus aside. And if I do something at the weekend that's fun, and I'm able to record a little bit on my phone, then it means while I'm away, I can carry on that fun and have a bit of my hobby by just editing it up, putting it out online, answering a few questions with you guys, learning some stuff off you guys, and it just carries it on. I feel less like I'm captive in a hotel and more like I'm still enjoying myself. So that is why I started doing this. As we've gone on, we've gained, there's nearly 5,000 subscribers now, which blows my mind. And those subscribers are pure class. You're all wonderful people, boys and girls. I'm just going to call out 2 or 3 names just because, give you a flavour of things. Most of you should know we have a subscriber called Gary Van Remortal. And here's his document, a printout. It's an older version actually, that's on my desk. And Gary basically has documented and pictured a lot of the stuff that he's done to his XK8 over the years. He's constantly gathering information, learning off of forums and friends, and from this channel, from your discussions, from the community, and adding and updating that document. And he gave it to the garage to host so that we can all link to it whenever we want. And if you haven't seen that yet, get to the community tab on the homepage of the channel, and then a second or third item down there is Gary's XK8 Bible. And you click on the links and you can view that document. Thank you very much, Gary. There are people like David Yao or Yao. Apologies for mullering people's names. I'm no good at pronunciation. And he sent a calendar to me, an XK8 calendar from Bahrain, because he'd made a calendar for himself and his friends and sent me one. Thank you so much. Mark Body, he's a military master mechanic, and he advised me on the right tool to get when I was after the tiny little hex drive ratchet for undoing the screws that hold my backplate in. He gave me the top tips on getting the right tools for that. Thank you very much, Mark. You're all great. I enjoy the community so much, and I'm hoping that you do too, and you get something out of it. And this is feeling more like a club than it is a video channel. So I think that the community and the scene is very much part of ownership of the XK8, and it's what keeps me in love with the car. There you go. So we're going to round this one off here, and we'll do numbers 3, 2 and 1 very soon. I anticipate putting them out next week, so you'll have to wait just a little bit longer for that. It takes me quite a while to edit with this style of video rather than just filming something in the garage. And I look forward to seeing you, and more importantly hearing from you via the comments areas. I'll put a couple of little polls on again, and I will put together something that feeds back all of the data that those generate very shortly. Thanks very much for watching, and come back soon. Stay safe, boys and girls. Bye.